You transform your thought life and switch your brain on for success. This is the Leaders of Transformation podcast. And on this show, we interview difference makers and world changers who are disrupting for good. Thank you for listening. I'm your host, Nicole Jansen, and our guest today is David Ibarra, who is a successful business leader, coach, philanthropist, and the author of Stop Drifting. And today we're going to talk about how to take control of your thoughts and pivot to the positive, no matter what's happening around you. And Lord knows there's a lot going on in the world right now. And so this topic is very, very timely. Are you ready? Well, if you're ready, post in the chat, I'm ready, and let us know where you are listening and watching from. We have listeners in over 140 countries, and so you just never know who's going to show up. And we appreciate you being here and want you to be part of this conversation. So during the interview, as I'm talking to David, post your questions and your comments in the chat. We'd love to hear from you, and we will address your comments and questions as we go along. Before I go any further, I want to do a shout out. I always like to acknowledge those that are supporting this show. Angel from Books Forward recommended David as a guest, and she has been amazing in coordinating this interview, as well as Crystal from David's team. So thank you to those ladies for doing this. Our podcast is actually brought to you by my coaching and training company. If you are a leader who wants to do better, be better, and make a greater impact in the world, go to leadersoftransformation.com/coaching and book a free consult with me to discuss your goals, your challenges, and tap into your genius zone so you can really become the leader that you're born to be. And of course, that's going to be the subject of today's conversation, as well as it is every week. We talk about that. What does it take for you to be a leader of transformation? And today our guest, as I said, is David Ibarra. And so I want to bring him on. David, welcome to the Leaders of Transformation.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. I look forward to the conversation.
Oh, likewise. I've been looking forward to this for a while. I loved your book. You know, the way that you wrote your book, the Stop Drifting. It's a story. And I kept thinking, is this David's story? Is this like a real story? So maybe just why don't we start off with, why did you write this book? What is it about? Kind of give us the context for it as we talk about our shaping our thought life and pivoting for the positive.
Well, one, as I traveled through life and not starting off at the top, certainly, I was raised in foster care for the first 14 years of my life. And, was a football player in high school, didn't pay attention much. And so I wasn't prepared for college. And when football ended due to an injury, I knew I had to do something different. So off to junior college I went in Sacramento, California, ill-prepared. And I needed to have a extra $200 for my rent, and I got a job in the nights washing dishes at a Farrell's ice cream parlor restaurant. And I was introduced by the owner, who saw something in me I certainly didn't see. He gave me a book and told me that if I would read it 3 times, highlight the things that I didn't understand or I'd like to discuss, that he would become my mentor for the rest of my life, as long as I became a disciple of the book. And the book was Think and Grow Rich by Dr. Napoleon Hill. I was 18. And so what happened there is I really learned to change this. I really learned that the power of thought, and that we're in charge of our thought. It's, nothing happens by an accident. We were fully in charge to anything that happens to us, good and bad, by our thought. And that stuck with me as a 19-year-old, as a 20-year-old, that, wait a minute, I could, woe is me, or I could say, why not me? And I chose the second and became a disciple of Dr. Hill's work. 10 years later, I bought a Farrell's ice cream parlor restaurant franchise, became the youngest franchise owner, and went on to open now 7 businesses. And today, as I look back and think of that 18-year-old angry Latino kid going nowhere from the bad side of town to being the largest licensee of Think and Grow Rich seminars in the world, China, Singapore, Mexico, Central America, Latin Caribbean. Wow. If I can do it, anybody can do it. So I've dedicated my life to working with employed adults who get up and go to jobs they don't like, quietly suffocating in unhappiness and committing spiritual suicide. How can we help people conquer work so they can give attention to the other important roles? And I would say most important roles: family, faith, community, and health. So that's my mission, and that's what I do.
Wow. Well, there's, when I think about the transformation that you made and the commitment, I hear in their commitment and your mentor. I remember being that age and thinking, somebody tell me what I need to do. Like, please. And to what a gift to have a mentor that would lead you and to lead you in the right direction. You can have mentors, but leading you in the right direction, giving you not just the information, but the inspiration and the discipline to study something that goes well beyond the mentor themselves is really powerful. But you said something there, and it struck a chord. Spiritual suicide. You said that people are committing spiritual suicide. What do you mean by that?
When you're not happy and you're fearful that you're not living up to your role as a father, a partner, a husband, a neighbor, or what have you, then you drift and spin to a negative state of mind. And like attracts like. And you end up finding yourself thinking and doing and seeding your subconscious, which doesn't know the difference between right or wrong. Its only job is to make it so, for us to do and feel things that we don't need to do. And we certainly do not need to feel helpless, that there isn't a table setting at the table of success for us, that we don't matter. Does anybody see me? Does anybody notice me? Does any and we lose the little boy or girl that once ran wild within us, believing they could do anything, and we live a life that is not the one that we could or should have lived. So I believe that learning about the brain model, and that's in our my second book, Beyond Think and Grow Rich, we talk about the brain model and we talk about it in Stop Drifting. But the idea of the very first thing that we got to conquer is, how did we get where we are, good or bad? And if we can recognize how the brain worked to take us there, then the the way it got us there is the same, depending, and the only difference is whether it was a negative thought or a positive thought. So how is it that we could become the switch master of our own thought and pivot to positive, to be in a positive state of mind? And that's the fuel that runs our brain model. And if we can be in a positive state, then nothing but good's going to happen to us.
Yeah.
And that's the starting point of anything to do with change.
Yeah. Yeah. Before we go any further, I want to just acknowledge we have Eddie here. Eddie said he is ready, and thank you for being here, Eddie. I also want to do a shout out for Deke Copenhaver. He's actually a previous guest. It's been on this show, and an amazing man who has created a lot of success and has actually written a book called The Change Maker. And he has a podcast called The Change Maker. You probably would be a really good guest for his show as well. And so I just want to give a shout out to Deke. Thanks for watching. We really appreciate you. And any of you that have questions or comments as we're going along, please, I want this to be relevant to where you're at and what you're going through, and to get your questions answered. This is a huge opportunity. As David has said, he's the number one seminar leader for Napoleon Hill and Think and Grow Rich. And for those of you that have read the book, there's a lot of tremendous wisdom in that. So please post your comments and your questions if you have them. Now, David, you talk about, and it was interesting because even in the title, the subtitle of your book, it talks about thought power, the thought. And it was interesting because it's not thoughts. You mentioned thought, like as a singular thing. And you talked about just a few moments ago about the thought that, how did we get here? So, can you address that a little bit? Like, so for people that are listening, it's like, how did I get here. Some of that's going to be so subconscious they don't even know that those things are running. What's running behind the scenes, all those programs that are running. How to talk about that, and what's that singular thought that tends to drive us, or determine the path that we take in our thought.
I run 7 companies, and I spend 80% of my time as the CEO of all of the companies. I am very hands-on. I take, and our companies are all about helping business owners from China to Detroit. How is it that you get your most? I like to work with the business owner because of the number of associates connected to them. If you can look at it, takes 2 things to create success, and it's capital and talent. Everyone that comes into my office and sits down, I don't have one client that sits in front of me that's not a bona fide millionaire already. They're coming in and they're concerned about the same question I ask them. What are you concerned about? And it's protecting and growing my capital. If I'm not going forward, I'm going backwards. And what I introduce is celebrating and developing the other half of it, talent. Now, how do you do that? And the next question that we get into, tell me, what's concerning you? They tell me it's about capital. Give me an example. And they'll give me an example every time. And they said, let's break it down. And I draw a circle and I talk about the brain. 80% of the brain is the subconscious, and it is where all of our thoughts are seated to be created. And the subconscious does not know the difference between right or wrong. It only creates it. 15% of our brain is the conscious. It's the driver. It's the engineer that's making it so. The subconscious directs the conscious, and it activates it. But 5% is where all of the action happens. That's our imagination. Now, our imagination connects to emotions, like a motion detector to motion. And the emotion can be fear or joy. So once you connect it to it, you can have only one thought in your brain at a time for a moment. And positive and negative are so unfriendly, they can't possess the same space. It's up to us. Is that a thought or an emotion I want acted upon? It's interesting. I'll listen to folks talk to me, and they'll be very negative, particularly about politics. And I used to just be polite and just listen. Okay. And then I realized I had opened up the gates for my own subconscious to be seated. So we had to learn an exercise of reflect to reject. So I, with a smile, will say, oh, I understand. Now, that is fascinating material you're sharing with me. Tell me, where exactly is the document that supports that? I'd love to read the unshakable facts concerning your opinion. Can you give that to me? I'm not talking to the individual in front of me. I'm rejecting to reflect. I'm reflecting to reject. I'm talking to my own subconscious, saying, David, you don't believe that. That is probably not true. That is most likely hearsay. So instead of being polite, put a smile on my face, say it out loud. And I just told my own brain model, do not accept that to my subconscious. Do not allow that to be seated. I'm in charge of what gets seated there. And it took me well into my 50s to really master this. And so when that happens and I can feel myself in negative, I simply smile. And people ask me, why do you smile all the time? They don't have a clue. I'm pivoting. And I smile and I think of the 3 most glorious thoughts that have ever happened in my life. A sporting event is one. Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier. The second is my son being born. And then the power of books that I've read, a book club that I belong to, and just sharing on all the places you can go in your mind. And immediately I'm smiling. I'm now in a positive state of mind. And what happens going forward is going to occur through a positive state. So no matter what, I smile. Everybody says, and when I share with them, boy, you smile a lot. And I says, I'm pivoted a lot. There is negative everywhere. And that's the shield that I put around my brain. I'm in charge of my brain model. I'm the driver. The creator gave us the gift to control our thought. We just weren't given the rule book to go with it. And the brain model, understanding how it works, that's the rule book to the game of life. 3% of the people in our world win the game. 10% will achieve in the game. 60% just get through it without winning or losing. And 27% lose the game of life. I want to win it. So that's what we teach very first is the brain model. So we'll go over something that occurred. Then I'll ask, share with me the thoughts that occurred 4 weeks before this occurred. And they'll lay out the thoughts. Is that a positive thought or a negative thought? Well, that was a fear thought. So what did you just do? Oh, I seeded my subconscious. To do what? To make it so. So where did you end up? Where I am. That's why I'm in front of you. Now, let's say you grabbed an emotion that was a positive state of mind. It would have worked in the exact same way. So you're already an expert in how to use the brain model now that you understand it. Just connect to a joy emotion, a belief emotion, and go forward. There's a quote that I always tell everybody that I live by every morning. Some people see things as they are and say, why? Woe is me. Others dream dreams that never were and say, why not me? Be a change maker. Why not you? And you will grab market share once you do. Find your purpose, find a big idea attached to it, theme it so all your associates will understand how to deliver it, and then every guest that beckons your door, comes through your door, will feel it, and you'll gain market share. And that's what we do.
That's so good. That is so good. David, this one's for you. Thank you for people like you who are willing to help people focus towards their success. Thank you. We're so appreciative that you're here and watching. I appreciate that. David, wow, this is what you're talking about is so, like I was saying in the beginning, it is so important right now because when you talk about the thoughts that are circulating around social media, we're going live to social media and we're putting a positive message out there, but there's a lot of negative messages that are being circulated. And I love what you said there about the what did you call it? To not resist. You're not resisting. I guess that was my point. Is that a lot of people what they're doing is they're resisting the negative. They're angry with the negative. They're fighting the negative. And then what they're actually doing is reflect and reject. Thank you. And so they're actually resisting it. And so as we do that, then we actually become part of the problem because we're actually focusing and we're operating from that place of fear as well. And I love what you said there because it actually flips us to that place of love and joy where we're actually choosing as opposed to fighting off.
Well, I tell you that I tell all my clients, look, whenever you think of something positive, what's the exact next thought that enters your mind? And they always tell me the same thing. I can't do it. Why is that? That is the whispers of Dr. Doubt, the adversary himself. He's going to introduce you to one of the 7 fears, the fear of loss of love, the fear of not having enough money, of not accomplishing what you want within the time period that you have, old age, death, health, all of those things. And immediately you hear that chirping, and it's coming from everywhere. Everything, not everything, but when you look at the kind of stuff that's on social media, hearsay, anger, hate, it is hard to protect yourself. For me, I do not listen to any of the news programs anymore. I watch the evening news because it's reflect. I do not listen to any of the cable channel news anymore because it's not news. It is anger, whether it's from the far left or whether it's from the far right. It doesn't matter where there is. It's a circle. And when you get here, it is nothing but anger and clutter. We need to get back to the center where we can have common sense conversations. But when somebody gets angry, when they're talking to me about something, you know it's not backed by any kind of accuracy. And that's why they're angry. When you say, well, share with me, where can I go to get that data? I would be fascinated to read. Well, I just know it. Oh, so there isn't a report where you got, oh, okay. Boy, if you could find that, would you send that to me? Keep a smile on your face, and it ends. The conversation ends. The hatred evaporates. And if it doesn't, you have to walk away.
Yeah.
You have to
Yeah.
walk away.
And sometimes that's hard to do. It's easy to do and hard to do because it might be a friend, it might be a family member, and you just gotta say, I'm not having this conversation. I had a friend recently, a very good friend of mine, and said, we need to talk about this. I won't get into it because
Yeah.
it's going to go, but she said, we need to talk about this. And I said, no, actually, we don't.
Yeah.
We don't need to talk about it. It would
Well,
be better if we don't, because I really enjoy our friendship.
yeah.
And I don't want to taint that by anything that is going to come out of that conversation, which is not
Right.
productive. But I wanted to come back to come back to this brain model. So, so you talk about the 5% that is this imagination. And a lot of times, like we've heard, if people have been in personal development, they've heard about this idea that 80% of our brain, it was just subconscious and it's on autopilot. And I love what you said there, is like the subconscious mind doesn't know what the difference between what's real or imagined. I had somebody a number of years ago who would watch TV, and he'd watch this particular show, Californication. And I said, that show is not going to help you create a healthy relationship. And he said, but I know it's entertainment. I said, yeah, but your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference, and it's seeding, like you said. So a lot of people are, as I said, in the personal realm, are familiar with that whole idea of the subconscious mind and all of that. And then they talk about conscious mind. But what you actually differentiate is between conscious and imagination. So can you talk about the distinction between that and how we can actually really unlock the power of that?
Well, the imagination, and again, in my book, you'll see me acknowledge Dr. Calzado in Mexico, who's a researcher, and he works with terminally ill patients that go to him. And I've been going to him for 28 years as a wellness doctor. I check into his clinic for 4 days, 3 times a year, for 28 years. Nothing wrong with me. I just want to have my mind body 100% to get the most out of it. But he shared with me the 5%. He shared with me the brain model of during the first visit. He drew the circle and he went through, and I said, well, that's Dr. Hill, with the exception, he made it clearer that the 5% is the connector. It's what there's all these things floating out there, and you're connecting to these emotions that are either joy or negative. And so many of us, from our subconscious, what we seed in it, and the law of attraction, like attracts like. Well, if you're in a negative, you're looking for more negative and more negative and more negative until no one wants to talk to you. Or you can be the one that everybody's around in every social setting because they have a different outlook. They have this, we haven't achieved our great. When we talk about our country and politics, I'll take a moment. And when I ever hear we're the greatest country on earth, I almost laugh. I said, no, we're not. No, we're not. How can you say that when you've never been anywhere else? And I said, when you look at the statistical data of where we are in healthcare, where we are in mortality rate, and where we are in education, we're falling short. But what we are and was the greatest and can be again, we wrote 2 documents, the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, that articulated where we believed we could be someday. Would you take the journey with me to this place? It's not real. There isn't a, it's we the people in pursuit of Happiness. It's not for everyone yet. And we knew it when we wrote it, but we were going to ascend to it. It was a journey. We may never get to that version because it's ever going to be changing, but it was the journey of America. And boy, it made us all open up our imaginations of being so proud. We need to take that journey again. We need to dare to take that journey again to greatness, and we will look and act like greatness. We've stopped the journey, in my view, and just said we're great. Well, if we stop the development of ourselves and say, this is the best version of me, what would we be? It's always changing. What do I want to be? I don't want to be anybody other than the next best version of me. God gave me some talent, and I want to develop it. And so this is how I spend my time. I spend my time running my own companies for sure, but at least 2 days out of the week, I'm working with a company in their environment, changing something that is horribly bad. Whether it's they're going to lose their company, whether they're going to lose their franchise, they're a Chevrolet dealership or Mercedes dealership or whatever, and they call me because they've gotten notice. Well, why did this happen? And every time it's the same answer. You disrespected talent. You disrespected everybody that your associates and team members are employees, and you treated them as employees. It's a specialized talent group that has all different things. And when put together and used in harmony, those brains are connected. That's where you experience genius. And you won't experience it on your own. I'm ignorant in a lot of subjects, but I got some vice presidents that aren't in the very same subject. And I know when to lead and I know when to follow. And getting our top tier to know when to lead and know when to follow, that's the key. But dream big. It's about the journey. Just like it for us in America, it's about our journey. We're special. And we just need to take the journey and maintain that for ourselves and the lucky folks that live here. I'm the first generation born in the United States. I know the difference. My father came from Mexico as a migrant worker picking fruit in Utah. Why? To change the destiny for the Ibarra family. And now today I own 7 businesses, and my brother was assistant to the president of the United States. What other country has those kinds of stories? America's special. And we got to take the journey again. We got to do that with ourselves. We got to do that with our companies. Every person we are around us, we got to ignite the greatest version of them. And then we get Disney-like results.
Oh, this is so good. And it's such a good, like, I think about this rally call. I want to finish it there, but there is one more thing that I would love for you to talk about before we finish off. And it is time tithing. Because when you talk about we're great, even if we were great, there's always that now what, right? How are we making others great? You talk about talent, you talk about working with teams and so forth. So, talk about this idea of time tithing. Most of us are familiar with tithing and the concept of giving back money, but you're talking about time.
Well, I tell you, I came from, again, a humble background, foster care, wrong side of the tracks, projects. Most people said I was going to graduate from an institution, but it wasn't the educational institution. It was a different kind of institution. So when I achieved, and I'll never forget when I made my first $1 million, and I think I was in my early 30s, and the second, the third, and the fourth. And when I was asked, Mr. Ibarra during summer, "Are you a millionaire?" I couldn't let it come out of my mouth because it just was so foreign until I had to learn to say yes many times over. And let me share with you how you can achieve it. Now, once you achieve it, I believe for me, I had a moral obligation to give back. And if you don't give back, or whenever I'm lost or sad, I just meet with somebody who has a need. And afterwards, it's amazing how you just have a mindset change. So I started this Wednesday night. Anyone in the community anywhere, whether it's a Zoom meeting, normally it's here in my office, you get on my schedule, you come in, you tell me what it is that you're after, what it is that you want, what is your goal, what is it's missing. And if you're willing to take that book that's right behind me, read it 3 times, and come back to show me you're serious, I'll be your mentor until you achieve it. There is no cost. You have to be able to, in my interview, show me that you can afford a performance coach. So I'll be your performance coach, just like Bob Farrell was my performance coach at Farrell's Ice Cream Parlor Restaurants. And we'll work through it. Today, I am well over 1,000 of these time tithing gifts. And they were gifts to them, or were they 1,000 gifts to me? I believe it was 1,000 gifts to me. And I started the foundation, the Ibarra Foundation, to not only give the gift of time tithing, give a tithing. How much money are you going to give? And so right now I've got 16 Latino kids that were just like me. They may have not done well in school, but in their interview, I could see they had a desire to change. And so I'm paying for 16 kids to go through college. And I put 105 kids through college, and I never graduated from college myself. But I've got an honorary doctorate degree that was given to me.
The best kind.
That's the best kind.
That's the best kind. David, you're such, like, obviously, you live this, you breathe this, you eat this, you emulate it, and it is just so refreshing. It is so refreshing to be around you and someone that is full of joy and just operates from that place consistently. So thank you for your boost of positivity, but not just empty positivity. Practical positivity this is what you can do to live a life of choice and live with intention. And I think about that again, coming back to that brain model, imagination and consciousness. We can be aware, but then what do we do with that awareness to actually make it a choice and say, where are we going? Which emotion are we going to live from? So good. Final thoughts for our listeners as we wrap up. Anything that we didn't talk about that you want to make sure you talk about?
Well, I will tell you this, is that everything starts with how to learn to have a positive state of mind, and then move as quickly as you can to gaining your purpose. Find your big idea that makes you different, and then theme it in such a way that everyone knows what you do and how they're going to feel when they do services with you, visit your business. And then nothing happens until you have a purpose and you know what you want. And once you do, glorious things appear.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. I want to encourage our listeners to go get a copy of David's book, Stop Drifting. You can go to his website, davidribarra.com/stop drifting, to get a copy of his book. David, I just so appreciate you and thank you for being here. And thank you for our listeners for being here as well. Yes, go ahead.
If I might add, it's available on Amazon.
Yes,
.com in Spanish and English and audio, and on my own website as well.
Beautiful. And you've got some great material in addition to that on the website as well. And you've obviously, like you said, you shared about Wednesday evenings and the opportunities that people have. So I just encourage our listeners and viewers to go and learn more about what David is doing. Learn how you can change your life by applying what he's teaching. Use the brain model. Read Napoleon Hill's book 3 times. Some of the most successful people that I know just keep reading it over and over and over again. And I do as well. It's like every time you read it, you think, did I hear that last time? Did I read that last time? It just becomes richer as you go along. And so I would highly encourage you to do that. Again, thank you for listening. A couple of final things before we finish up. This is episode 395. There are 394 amazing episodes with other difference makers and world changers. I would encourage you, if this is your first time listening or watching, go to leadersoftransformation.com and you can access them there. They're all there and they're categorized for you. So it makes it easy. You can even type in a topic that you want to learn about. And if we've done an episode on it, it will show up. We appreciate, the people that have been on this show and how they've contributed, because this is like a library, a wealth, knowledge, mastermind of information to be able to help you become the difference maker and the world changer that you're capable of being. And again, you can go to leadersotransformation.com. You can follow us, of course, online. And stay tuned for next week. We have another amazing, amazing guest that is going to join us next week. And we just appreciate you watching, and we look forward to seeing you again. We love to hear your comments. If you're watching this afterwards, after the live is being restreamed, still share with us your comments, share with us your questions, and we'll make sure that we respond and support you along your journey. So again, thank you so much. Thank you, David. And we look forward to seeing you next week.
My pleasure.